Half of all women over 50 will develop osteoporosis. Half. That is not a rare condition or a worst-case scenario. It is what happens to the majority of women in that age group when they do not take specific steps to prevent it. And the particularly difficult thing about osteoporosis is that it gives you no warning. It is called a silent disease because there are no symptoms as it develops. Bones are quietly losing density for years, sometimes decades, and the first sign that anything is wrong is often a fracture from a fall that should not have been serious. The good news is that this is one of the most preventable conditions in medicine. The habits that protect bone density are not complicated, they are not expensive, and most of them produce benefits that go far beyond bone health alone. But there is one on this list that surprises almost everyone, and we are going to get to it because it completely changes how you think about the relationship between stress and your skeleton. Stay with me because number 2 involves something you do every night that has a more direct connection to your bone health than most people ever realize. And number 7 is one of the most underrated forms of exercise for bone protection that almost nobody is doing. Before the 7 habits, it helps to understand what is actually happening in the body when osteoporosis develops. Bone is not static tissue. It is constantly being broken down and rebuilt in a process called bone turnover. When you are young, your body builds bone faster than it breaks it down. Peak bone mass is typically reached somewhere in your late 20s to early 30s. After that, the balance gradually shifts. Bone breakdown starts to outpace bone building. That shift accelerates significantly after menopause due to the drop in estrogen, which plays a key role in regulating bone metabolism. By the time a woman reaches her 50s and 60s, the rate of bone loss can be substantial if nothing is actively counteracting it. The chief of the Calcium and Bone section at Brigham and Women's Hospital describes osteoporosis as a disease characterized by low bone mass, low bone density, and structural changes in bone that contribute to decreased bone strength and increased fracture risk. It is diagnosed through a bone density scan. But the point of everything we are covering today is to build habits that prevent you from needing that diagnosis in the first place, or to slow the progression if it has already begun. The first and most foundational habit is getting enough calcium and vitamin D consistently. Calcium is the primary mineral that makes up bone tissue. Vitamin D controls how much calcium the body absorbs from food. Without sufficient vitamin D, most of the calcium you eat passes through your system without being used. Women over 50 should aim for 1,200 milligrams of calcium per day and between 600 and 800 international units of vitamin D. The best food sources of calcium include cow's milk, Greek yogurt, ricotta, and kale. For vitamin D, salmon, sardines, egg yolks, and shiitake mushrooms are among the strongest food sources, and sunlight exposure also triggers vitamin D production in the skin. These two nutrients work as a team, and both need to be present consistently for bone protection to be meaningful. The second habit is one most people have never heard connected to bone health. Sleep. A study published in Current Opinion in Endocrine and Metabolic Research found a direct link between sleep quality and bone health. And the reason is specific. A significant portion of bone turnover, the process of breaking down old bone and replacing it with new bone, happens during sleep. If sleep is consistently disrupted or insufficient, that rebuilding process is interrupted. Over years, that interruption adds up to measurably lower bone density. Getting consistent quality sleep is not just about energy and cognitive function. It is an active part of how your skeleton maintains itself. The third habit is the one that genuinely surprises people: laughing. Specifically, managing cortisol through humor and other stress reduction practices. Research from Loma Linda University found that even anticipating laughter reduces cortisol levels by 39%. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone, and elevated cortisol levels over time directly damage and break down bone tissue. Chronic stress is a bone health enemy that almost nobody talks about. Whether through laughter, mindfulness, time in nature, or whatever stress reduction approach actually works for a given person, keeping cortisol levels in a healthy range has a measurable protective effect on bone density. The same elevator trick used for sleep Imagining yourself descending slowly in an elevator and repeating that intrusive thoughts can wait can help interrupt the cortisol cycle at night and support both better sleep and lower overall stress. The fourth habit is weight-bearing exercise, and this is where the exercise recommendations for osteoporosis get specific in a way that matters. Not all exercise stimulates bone growth equally. Weight-bearing activities, meaning exercises where you are on your feet and bearing weight through your lower body, create ground reaction forces at the bones that signal bone cells to grow stronger tissue. Walking, hiking, climbing stairs, dancing, and even pickleball all qualify. The physical stress of bearing weight and moving against gravity is the exact stimulus that bones need to respond by building more density. Sedentary living removes that stimulus entirely, which is why a sedentary lifestyle is one of the strongest independent risk factors for osteoporosis, regardless of diet or other habits. The fifth habit is resistance training, and it targets a specific vulnerability. Fractures of the femur, the large thigh bone, are among the most common and most serious fracture sites in people with osteoporosis. Strengthening the muscles that surround and support the hip and thigh directly reduces fracture risk at those sites. Squats, step-ups, and lunges are the core movements. Physical therapist Kristen Gasnick, who works with osteoporosis patients at Holy Name Medical Center, is direct about this. Improving physical activity levels and the types of exercise performed can improve bone mineral density and potentially reverse the extent of osteoporosis as new healthy bone is built. It is never too late to start. Even people who have not exercised in years can build bone density through consistent resistance training. The sixth habit is chair exercises, specifically recommended for people who are just beginning to move more after a period of inactivity or who are not yet ready for hiking or gym-based training. Harvard exercise specialists have noted that chair-based weight-bearing movements can stimulate bone-forming cells and strengthen the supporting muscles without requiring the level of exertion that outdoor or gym exercise demands. The chair stand is a simple starting point. Sit in a stable chair positioned against a wall, cross your arms over your chest, slowly stand up straight, then slowly lower back down. 8 to 12 repetitions once a day is enough to begin stimulating the relevant bone and muscle groups. The barrier to entry is almost zero, and the evidence supports it as a meaningful starting point for people who need one. The seventh habit is yoga, and this is the one that most people underestimate. Research published in the Topics in Geriatric Rehabilitation found that doing at least 12 minutes of yoga poses, specifically including tree pose, warrior two, and triangle pose, helps reduce bone loss due to osteoporosis. Yoga works through two separate mechanisms simultaneously. First, it is a form of resistance training in which you are bearing your own body weight through specific positions that load different bones. Second, it is a balance exercise that improves stability and coordination, which reduces the risk of falls. Since a fall is often what turns low bone density into an actual fracture, improving balance is a direct intervention in the fracture risk chain. 12 minutes. That is the threshold the research identified. Not an hour of advanced yoga, 12 minutes of specific poses practiced consistently. Pulling all of this together, the approach to preventing osteoporosis after 50 is not about any single habit. It is about building a consistent foundation that addresses nutrition through calcium and vitamin D, recovery through quality sleep, stress through cortisol management, and physical loading through weight-bearing movement and resistance training. Each of these habits is doing something different in the bone metabolism system, and together they create conditions where bone density can be maintained, and in some cases improved, even after the years when loss becomes the default. Osteoporosis affects half of women over 50, but it is not an inevitable outcome. It is a condition with well-understood risk factors and well-understood preventions. The 7 habits covered here are all of them. If this channel is giving you health information worth knowing, subscribing means you will not miss what comes next.